Alrighty, I think we can go ahead and get started. Um, all right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Alumni Speaker Series presented by the Pitt School of Social Work's Alumni Council. I'm Riley Belden England, and I work on the philanthropic and alumni engagement team here. I will kick off this evening with a brief introduction of the program and our speaker, Katherine Marshall. Before doing so, I do want to thank our Alumni Council Chair, Kiamber Ford, for facilitating this event and the conversation to come. So the Alumni Council's mission is to serve as a bridge between the school and the social work community and is actively committed to connecting and engaging current students, alumni, and faculty. The Alumni Speaker Series is a way to highlight alums and allow them to share their experiences in the program and throughout their career. It is our hope that this program acts as a reminder and motivator to our students and fellow alum of all the incredible possibilities that exist for social workers. Our speaker this evening is Katherine Marshall. Katherine graduated from the School of Social Work in April 2020, obtained her LSW later that year, and achieved her goal of becoming a licensed clinical social worker in 2023. Katherine has held various roles in mental health settings, her favorite of which being a child and family therapist for 2 years. In the fall of 2023, Katherine decided to pursue travel social work. She currently travels the country providing empathetic care to patients and families in hospital settings. Katherine embodies both compassion and determination in the effort to continually move the social work profession forward for the benefit of fellow changemakers in our communities as a whole. Notably, Katherine is an advocate for creating a new narrative. Social workers are indeed able to serve, affirm, sit with, advocate for, empower, and provide unconditional positive regard, all while achieving limitless financial goals and creating a legacy of generational prosperity for themselves and their families. Katherine Marshall is a dreamer, a visionary, a fellow friend, and a lover of all things faith, family, and fun. Thank you again for being here, Katherine, and all of our participants. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Riley and Shannon and Kiamber. And thank you everyone for joining. I see some of my family and friends on here. Thank you so much. I am excited to share a little bit of my story with you all. And I know most of the cameras are off, but I would love some crowd participation at some point. So even if you just jump in the chat or hello, we got a camera. Or if you use the little emojis to raise your hand, a camera. However you want to participate, that would be wonderful. My auntie. So first of all, it's a Wednesday, and I'm sure we've had very full, long days. So I know I need a breath. This is the social worker in me. I know I need a breath, but anyone else who needs a breath, I just welcome and invite you all to take a big breather before we jump into this. So I'm gonna take a deep breath. And I'm gonna breathe it out because I'm a social worker and we have long days. And even if you're not a social worker, there are long days. So I went to University of Pittsburgh. I chose social work because I thought I wanted to save the world. Anybody else at one point in time think that you could save the world? I raise a hand, show of hands. Yeah, who got any emoji hands that thought maybe you could save the world? Yes, my girl India. Yes. And so the Pitt School of Social Work really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I could make a difference in, but it also showed me the complications of this world that I knew was too much for only me to make a difference in. And so when I first started, it was hard for me to wrestle with what do I do? What do I do with the heaviness that I'm seeing in the world? What do I do with the heaviness that I'm seeing, that I'm learning about in the classroom? And so that was a journey. That took a little while. There were a few professors. I know my school social work professor, my models of intervention. Anybody remember Professor Alicia, Professor Toya? Yep. They were really great. And so they just really hammered down on this idea of what does it look like to be a social worker and to still live in this world. And so that's one challenge that I've had, and one challenge that I want to continue to make strides through. And so the HIT social work program helped me to kind of reckon with those things. And so as this was going on, the devastating Tree of Life shooting happened in Pittsburgh. And so again, I was faced with the reality of this is so hard. Life is hard and this work is hard. What am I going to do with this? How is this going to be my reality? And so one professor was talking about self-care. Who has been inundated with the self-care talk? Who's like, this self-care stuff, like, what does this mean? Who actually knows how to do it? What's the point? And so when I was a Pitt social work student, I was pretty cynical about self-care. Like, this isn't real. I see you shaking your head, right? Like, yeah, it's like, what does that mean? And even as an adult, as a human. And so one of my professors, I was kind of giving her a hard time, like, what does this even mean? What are we talking about here? And she looked at me and she said, I can't answer that for you. I can't tell you what it means to take care of yourself in this profession. I can't tell you what that means. You have to figure that out for yourself. You have to sit with yourself and ask, how am I caring for myself? How am I adding joy to my life? And so from Pitt School of Social Work through working at Western Psych, through being a therapist to now a travel social worker, it's not a one-time question. I have to regularly ask myself, how am I adding life? How am I adding joy? How am I upholding the values of social work and also upholding values in my own life? And sometimes those things can be challenging. And so one other person that really inspired me, the Pitt School of Social Work, I know some of y'all know, I need your hands, Miss Kiva Fisher-Green. I need some emoji hands. Who knows Miss Kiva Fisher-Green from Homewood Children's Village when she first, yeah, yeah, yeah. We love Kiva. Yes, we do. I call her, yep, my Auntie Kiva. And she would just always, I felt like we love Kiva. She was a really great example of how you can be fully present and fully a social worker and still fully involved in your life with no regrets at all. And so she really started me on this journey of getting my LSW in August of 2020. She said, Katherine, study, take the test. So after I graduated Pitt School of Social Work, did the homeschool visitor program, concentration, wasn't sure if I really wanted to do that. And I said, I don't need to take the test. And she said, take that test. Like, why not? Being a social worker with no regrets, yes. And so I studied, I took the test, and I passed my LSW. Started working at Western Psych. Inpatient psych is a lot. Anybody in mental health, we all know that that's a lot. And then I transitioned into outpatient. I moved back to Maryland, transitioned into outpatient psych, mental health therapy, and I loved it. And I thought I was doing good. I was like, I'm good. And Kiva said, why don't you get your C? I was like, that's a lot. I'm not ready. I'm too young. I got some time. And she said, who do you need to email? Who do you need to call? How do you get your hours? What are you writing down? And so practical steps is who's in your corner that's encouraging you to live life to the fullest and to also shoot for the stars with your profession, whether that's social work or somebody else, someone in the field who is willing to just sit down. We went to Panera a bunch of times and just had coffee and talked about what are my fears about my profession? What am I, what do I feel like I'm not bringing to the table? Why do I feel like I'm not valuable enough to go for the stars? Because I didn't think I was qualified to be a C. Like, why should I have a C behind my name? And so she just would always tell me, you're a star. You're a star. You're a star. And so every one of you, you're a star. And whatever that means for you, you really are. And so even if you don't have someone in your corner right now, you be yourself in the corner and say, I need to get out of this bed. I need to send that email. I need to write down what do I want to accomplish personally and professionally. And so that leads me into the last point, before I know we're going to get into some questions, is I had to ask myself, and even as I was preparing this, I was like, I don't have the answer. Like, wow, I'm going to ask them, what does it mean for you to be a social worker? Because it can be easy to think of, well, this person has a private practice, and this person's an entrepreneur, and this person's saving the community, and this person's doing that. But what does it mean for you for you? And maybe you're not a social worker. And so whatever role you find yourself in, maybe it's not even professionally, maybe it's just as a person. What does it mean for you to be well, to um, be an employee, to be a mom, to be a human? Like, what does that look like for you? And it might be different. And then I took it a step further and realized that's dynamic. And so I'm a travel social worker right now. In 5 years, I probably won't be a travel social worker, and that's okay. And so just realizing that different reasons, different seasons, that's all okay. And so reflecting on professionally, personally, what do you want things to look like, and not being afraid of what that answer might be if it looks different for other people and different for yourself. And so that will kind of transition into some questions for travel social work, some questions about what could it look like to maybe try something new, and what if it works out? And so being a travel social worker was never anything that I thought would happen, but it's worked out pretty well, starting from Western Psych in a psych hospital, then going to outpatient mental health, and then now being a healthcare worker in a medical field. And I'm hoping in a couple of years I have my own business. I do consulting, I do DEI, and then maybe something on the side. And so just staying in touch with yourself, staying in touch with your people. I stay in touch with my Lord because it's tough out here. And so I would love to talk about more. The next section will be more about travel social work in general. Any questions? Kiamber has some questions for me that I'll kind of think about and talk through.
Katherine, thank you so much for sharing. I am really excited to get into these questions. And I definitely want to kick us off. Can you just explain, if we do have some people who aren't social workers, travel social workers, even that have a social work background in general, what do you do as a travel social worker? I heard the term healthcare, medical something. What does that even mean? Break it down for us.
What does it even mean? And y'all, social work. What does social work really even mean? Like, we do all of the things all of the time, but we're pretty awesome. We are. And so I will sum it up in, a lot of travel social work is directly in a medical hospital setting. And so we are working really closely with the nurse case managers to make sure every patient has a safe discharge plan. So that might mean a discharge plan to a rehabilitation center for physical occupational therapy. That might be a discharge to maybe like a skilled nursing facility. It might be a discharge home. Sometimes it might be discharge back to jail. Sometimes it might be discharge over out of state. So really our plan is to make sure, how can we continue this care, this person, how can this person continue to live their lives successfully outside of the hospital? So, and then of course, as social workers, we get thrown like, oh, do we have to call APS? This person doesn't have insurance. What resources can we provide to this patient? This patient doesn't feel safe to go home. And so we kind of make everybody's job continue forward. We'll say the doctors, the nurses, I think we're the glue that holds it all together, but I'm biased. So
How would you say travel social work is different from the other social work roles you've had?
that's a good question. That's a good question. And I'm curious, does anybody want to put in the chat, if anybody on here who is a social worker, or even if you're not, just what are roles of social work that that you typically think of? What do you think of social work? Because I know travel social work can seem so different, but what are some typical roles for social work that you think about? And then we can maybe compare it to some of those. I'm curious. And even if you're not a social worker, because I know we think social work, we think snatching people's kids, but we don't do that.
Just put that in the chat. You know, that's the first thing that people think. We just take people kids. And that's not the case. We do a lot more.
Too.
Yes, India, to the macro social work currently in partner engagement, community development. Working with CPS, yep, caseworker and community engagement, case manager, school social work, clinical services. You better represent for Costa.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, India, for keeping us more macro. Yes.
No, I always got to bring it, Katherine.
Yes, yes. Okay, awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Yes. And so honestly, we do a lot of those things in the hospital because I quickly realized people are people and people still live in this world and have all sorts of things going on. As we talk about in social work, the person in the environment. And so this person is coming into the hospital, they still have all of these environmental things going on. And India, to your point, I was surprised to learn that inpatient medical social workers still work with so many systems and so many different community partners as well. And so I learned that direct practice and community work, as we all know, there. And so I would say the role is very similar in a lot of ways to making sure people have the services that they need, the resources, being therapeutic, being empathetic, listening well. But I would say it's different in, honestly, it's not as emotionally taxing, I will say. I needed a break from mental health. So that is the difference. If you need a little break from mental health, come on over. We got room for you. But I would say it's a lot more administrative, like it's a lot more high level. And that was a hard adjustment at first of thinking, man, am I not serving people well? Am I not impacting people well? But it's the backside. And I think that goes to show with every single person on this call, regardless of what you're doing, it can still matter. It might not seem like it in the moment. You might not be face to face with someone, but if we really look at the different marks along the way, your piece is important. And so every piece of the puzzle matters and is beneficial for others. So that's what I'd say.
Katherine, would you say that one of the challenges you faced in being a travel social worker was that you had to, and you didn't say this verbatim, but this is what I heard. So correct me if I'm wrong. You know, what I heard you say was that your identity was initially attached to being on the front lines of social work. And travel social work kind of takes you off the front line and puts you in a more administrative position. So you had to figure out, is the work I'm doing still considered valuable social work? Like, am I really still a social worker? Am I just, saying I'm doing social work when I'm not really doing it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The first time I was shadowing and I went into a patient room, and I see your question on cam, we'll remember your chat question. The first time I went into a patient room, I was in there for 5 minutes. And I was like, how can I be a good social worker if I'm only talking to someone for 5 minutes? And then I had to recognize and also humble myself and recognize that every role has a place, and is one place better than the other. And that could be said for all different portions of life. We are all called and created for different purposes. They're all different, but is one really better than the other? We all serve a purpose. We all have something that maybe the next person needs. Kiamber, we're not the same person. We don't have the same call. We have a different light, but it's still a light. And so that is something that this has showed me.
Thank you for clarifying. So in this next question, I'm going to ask, it's possible that you're going to be able to answer Cam's question as well. I want to know, how do you navigate the different work cultures and the different personalities as you move from like state to state, organization to organization? Like, how is that? And, in the process of that, like, are the different populations you work with always the same at every location? Like, is it always adults? Is it always kids? Does it switch? You mentioned somebody getting discharged to prison. So if you be working with prisoners, we want to know. You want to
That's
know
such
the
a
in
good
and out.
question. Okay, I'm having more participation. Who has been sick before?
Who's been what?
Who's been sick?
Oh, I mean, we done made it past 2020. I hope everybody
No,
raised their
we've
hand at
all
this
been
point.
sick. Who has had to use medical services of some type before? Most people. And that's another eye-opening thing of a lot of people come to the hospital, like so many people. But it makes sense because we all have physical bodies and sometimes they break down. And that includes people who are in jail or people who are on their way to jail. There are people who unfortunately make bad decisions, or they are impacted by poor decisions or poor systems or all of those things, and they end up in the hospital. And so mostly I have worked on, or pretty much I've only worked on adult units, mostly geriatrics, which has also given me a very different perspective on aging. It's really difficult. And so going from, I worked, my first travel assignment was in Dayton, Ohio, which is like, I didn't know that was the Midwest, y'all, but I was like, whoa, this is a little different. I'm from Baltimore. My assignment now is in Baltimore. And so going from Dayton, Ohio to Baltimore, Maryland, it's a world of a difference. The way employees interact with each other, the way just the patients and families interact, not bad, but just different. And so I was thinking about this question today, and just in daily life, of not assuming that I'm the smartest person in the room, not assuming that I know the most in the room, maybe because I have letters behind my name now, or because I've done this before, or I'm familiar. But as we always say, I'm not the expert. And so one key thing, especially for this assignment, has been, you tell me. Like, I am here to assist and play a role, but you tell me what you need. So it definitely has been interesting, but I'd say being friendly, not taking things personally, and having that work-life balance of, I've come to do a job and then I'm gonna go home. Honestly.
Katherine, is this your second assignment since getting into travel social work?
It is. It is. So this is very new. And so when I earlier was talking about what does social work look like for you, or your career, or your family, or your own self, whatever it is look like for you in this season, there might be a different answer. So I thought that it looked like keeping on the role of being I'm going to be a supervisor in this practice, and then I'm going to start my own, and then I'm going to go that route. And maybe one day I still will, but it looked like, I think I'm going to try something different, and it's scary and I don't know what I'm doing, but I think I'm going to give it a whirl. And so this is only my second travel assignment that I've been doing, but I think it's proof that we have, as one of the questions, we have a lot of transferable skills. I think we all do. And so being teachable, being excited, being willing to learn, being willing to fail. Just today, I put information in the wrong person's chart, and I was very embarrassed. And it's difficult. And I'm sure we've all messed up on the job before, but there's a solution for it. And so I think being willing to make mistakes, being willing to fail, and keeping it going.
So I want to back go back just a little bit because we have gotten deep into the travel social work, all the things, the experience day to day. How did you even get here? Like, what does that look like? Give me like a ABC 1, 2, 3. How do I get involved in travel social work? If today I'm like, you know what? By the end of April, I'm gonna have my first travel social work assignment. What is that like? What did that process look like for you actually getting your first contract, getting another contract after the first one was over? How long did you have to wait for a second one? You know, how quick is that turnaround time?
It's a process, and I know some of my friends on here can attest to it. It can be challenging. And so first got into it, it was a joke. It was one of those, what if? Yeah. Anybody have has anybody had just like a crazy idea and then you like did it?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so it started as a joke. All the
Going
best
to
stories.
travel.
Oh, y'all funny. We
Yes.
all came in at the time. The people in the chat right now all came in at the same time. So this is we get it a little too much for each other's.
Yes, exactly. And so that was kind of what travel social work was having this crazy idea that, man, someone's actually out there doing that. I could never do it. I could never leave my full-time job. I could never take this risk. My parents are going to think I'm crazy. I'm going to think I'm, whatever. I'm just being a millennial. And so one thing led to another. It started with a phone call. Honestly, it started with, you know what? I'm going to talk to a recruiter. And let me back up. It started with blogging social media pages. There's a page called Traveling Social Workers and Case Managers. It's probably like 40,000 people on that page if you're interested. There are YouTube videos, there are articles there are books on how to get into travel social work, so you can kind of peer in that way. And then I would say the next step would be just maybe asking around. You can ask me. I'm definitely a resource for sure. And then I think the first big step was having a phone call with the recruiter because that made it more real. And it showed me that I am marketable, that I do have skills. And so everyone on here, whatever your role is, social work or not, you have skills. Someone is in need or in want of what you have to offer, personally and professionally. And so that phone call was very inspiring to know I'm not just stuck here. I don't just have to do this one thing with my life. There are other things that I can explore, even if it wasn't in work, maybe personally, like this was a boost in confidence. So I had the phone call with the recruiter. It went well. And then she said, you know what? We have a job board. You'll start looking and seeing if there's any places you might want to go. Kind of lures you in because there are some really fun places. And so the conversation led to getting a few more details, then seeing that it really could be a good fit, talking it over with friends, with family, with the Lord. And then I had a really great supervisor at the mental health practice I was at who said, Katherine, why not? Try and see what happens. And so next thing you know, I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice and we're going for it. There is anxiety involved with taking a chance, big or small. And so that was difficult of being rejected. I was rejected a whole bunch more times than I was accepted. I was. And so finally had a bite, honestly, by the miracle chance. She didn't even know like that I was going to be who I was, or I didn't have a license in that state. She didn't even know. But then getting on the phone call, it went really well. So there can be gaps of time in between assignments, which is challenging. There can be maybe a shortage of assignments of places that you want to go, which is challenging. But all in all, most of those things kind of cancel out, and you really do end up where you're supposed to be. And you get to pick. No one's like, a lot of questions I get is someone just like ships you off somewhere, you get to choose where you want to go. So sometimes you got to wait for it, but you do get to choose.
Katherine, where are some locations that you want to go? You mentioned there's this job board and you're like, oh, I want to go there. I want to go there. Where are those places for you?
That's so fun. Okay, I'm going to involve the chat again. Where do y'all want to go? Where should we go? Any place, and they're only 3 months at a time. So it's like you don't have to commit too much. Love that, London. So if you're like, yeah, if my job just sends me here for 3 months and I could take my family too if I want to, where are we going? Zoe says Cali. Anywhere else fun? In Richmond. There are some jobs in Richmond, actually. North Carolina. That's fun. Yep. Ooh. Okay. Those are some good places. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm in my international bag today.
I'm pretty sure that's a thing too, international travel social work. So those are some really great places. A lot of these places are warm. That's where I want to be next. I see you shaking your head, Riley. I would love to live my best San Diego, California life. I really would. I had an opportunity to go to New Mexico, but I also travel with a pair, one of my really good friends. So didn't quite line up for the both of us. But I want to go to Anchorage, Alaska. And I want to experience what they experience during their times of darkness, which I think would be really interesting, especially from a social work perspective, to see how that affects the emotions, the care, because life can be challenging when it's dark a lot. So I would love to go to Alaska. I'd love to go to California. And the whole reason, another reason I started doing travel social work is because I recognize more and more that there are wildly different people that we do life with every single day, and how much that even differs regionally. And so, as social workers, when we talk about dignity and worth of a person, when we talk about integrity, right to self-determination, all of these things, it's like, man, does this really apply to everybody? Like, there's some interesting folks out there, but yeah, it does. Our values apply. And so it was kind of a personal challenge to me of, if I say that I want to be understood, I want to be known as a Black Christian woman, I want to be understood and known in all my facets. I think I want to get outside of my comfort zone to someone that I don't understand. Dayton, Ohio, I didn't understand a lot of that, but I gained such a great perspective, and I really loved it. The different pace, the different, honestly, value system for a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people that's different than like the DC area. And so that is another thing that travel social work offered me, was as a person and as a social worker, of how can I expand my view of what are my biases? What am I holding against people in different parts of the country, honestly, with different belief systems than me? So travel social work has challenged that. And sometimes I want to go to maybe the middle of Wisconsin and see what it's like there, see what different people are like in different places.
You said, what was it? You mentioned, I want to say it was the Ohio one. It was your first assignment. The lady didn't know that you weren't licensed for Ohio. How does that even work? Like your license going from state to state, the change, like what is that like?
Yes. And we have got to get a compact, y'all. Hopefully get one soon for social work. That would make this so much easier. Oh, thank you, Riley. See that? You're brave too. It might not look like this, but you are brave. Um, it's challenging. So basically, every single state has a different, have different expectations and different requirements. And so there's an application process for every single state. Some states are more complicated, some are not. I did not think I was going to be in Maryland because I was waiting on a license for my girl Zoe knows for almost like 2.5 months now. Nothing. It's just not working out. And so the plan was not to be traveling in Maryland right now, but that license was not coming through. There are other places I could have gone, but I decided to stay home in Maryland. But that can be a definitely you gotta stay on top of that, of knowing maybe like 2 or 3 months in advance. Okay, I'm interested in going this place. Let me start the license process now because it can take a while, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. Right now, I'm licensed in New Mexico, Ohio, Maryland. I'll say I'm half licensed in Pennsylvania from when I was there. I'm technically still on the records. And I'm in process in Arizona, New Mexico, not New Mexico, Arizona, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Washington State. So it's a lot of organization that has to happen.
Now, is the process to like being licensed in all those different areas the same? Well, in terms of, would it be the same as if you weren't a travel social worker and you were just doing virtual counseling, private practice with people in all of these different states? Like, would you still have to, like, would it be the same process? Do you know?
That's a good question. I know for the state of Maryland, if I am in my client has to be in the state where I am providing services to.
Okay.
So I could be in New Mexico, but my client would have to be in Maryland. I'm not sure how that works for every state, but basically, whoever you're serving, they have to be in the state that you have the license in.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. Licensure is a big thing that comes up, and I know people often have questions of like just even moving after graduation. Right. So moving to Pittsburgh for the University of Pittsburgh for the MSW program, leaving, wanting to be licensed all these different places. And it's good to know that if you are interested in travel social work, preparation is key. So do not wait until it's like month 3 and it's like, oh, I want to go to Cali next. Start on your Cali application as soon as you get whatever your first assignment is. That's what it sounds like.
Absolutely. That's a really key word. Preparation. Preparation and perseverance and positivity, all the P's.
Now, what does perseverance mean to you as a travel social worker?
That's good. I'm asking for some more help from the chat. What does it mean for you all, personally and professionally?
When I think of perseverance, I think of resilience. Like that's the first word that comes to my mind. I know that's like a synonym, maybe kind of, but that's what I think of. Pushing past something. And so I think resilience is built through that. Okay. Tamara, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Said professionally, advocacy is what she thinks about.
It's a really good one. Not something I thought of. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I love what you said, Kiamber, about pushing past. In my professional and personal life, perseverance often looks like that. Oftentimes we don't proceeding, making progress in spite of resistance. Yep. That's good, Tyree. That's good. It sounds like recognizing that hard things will come and are going to come. And what do we choose to do when that happens? Because they will. And so sometimes the answer is, I got to tap out. I have to, but that's not always the answer. And so even I've had to challenge myself of not going to the other end of the pendulum of tapping out every time, because that's not always the answer. Sometimes the answer is pushing past. And so that might mean showing up emotionally, showing up physically when I don't actually want to. Riley say. Understanding that healing is a continuous process, whether for ourselves or others. That's good. That's really good. And I'll tie it back to a theme that I first was speaking about, which was, what does it look like for you? And I think we might all have different answers, and that's okay. And so perseverance for me in this season might look different than what it looks like for Kiamber or Riley or Mickey or Emily or Tyree. Like, it might look different. And so, yeah, I think perseverance in this season is a balance of showing up when I don't want to, having hard conversations when I don't want to, being a good friend when I don't want to, being a good social worker when I don't want to. Our feelings may not always equate to what needs to happen. Yeah.
Katherine, you mentioned that you travel with a friend of yours. What support do you have as a travel social worker? Is this was this agreed upon that you and your friend both like, yeah, we're going to put in our 2 weeks notices and we're going to travel social work together? Like, how did that go? Do you have this, is this built-in support that you have with you?
It is. And it did go like that, actually. After it stopped being a joke and became a reality of, I think we can do this. I think this is worth it. Let's give it a try. Why not? And so, yes, my friend Jenna is a really great support of, especially on the first one, figuring out, imposter syndrome. After my second day, I literally was walking down the hallway in the hospital and I was saying, I have to go home. Like, I just drove 8 hours and packed up my car, but I think I have to leave because I can't do this. And so having a support to speak truth to you when there's a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of lies, whether those people are in person, whether those people are virtually, but being honest when things get difficult, being honest about insecurities, because as we all know, it's difficult for people to help when they don't know what's going on. And so sometimes it's saying those words out loud of, I don't think I'm doing a good job. I don't think I can do this. I'm scared. Why did I quit my job? What am I doing? And so again, these fears might look different for all of us on this call. But speaking those things out loud, giving them less power, and giving people the opportunity to support you, because most of the time people want to.
Thank you for sharing that. So because you are traveling with like a friend, you have this built-in support. There has to be some fun times, right? There got to be some perks to the side of travel social work where it's like, you know what? We done clocked out for the day. We got downtime. What are you doing in this downtime?
Absolutely. I have a list of probably 75 recommendations that people gave me from Dayton, Ohio, from one city, the little city that could, is what I like to call it. And it was very sweet. It was a sweet city. And so asking coworkers, and that's another way. I know you asked about, how do you navigate relationships in so many different spaces? Questions. We all know people like to talk about themselves and talk about things that they like. And so I literally would pull out my phone and I said, where should I go for coffee? Where should I go for pizza? Where should I go for church? Where should I go for shopping? Where should I go for concerts, for the mall, for a theater, and I just asked them a bunch of questions and it started conversations going, and then I got a whole list running. And so that is a perk of travel social work, is being able to go for 3 months to another part of the country where maybe you would never want to live, but you get to experience all that they have to offer, even if it's different, even if it's a small town, but getting to know something different. And then being in that geographic location opens up to when I was in Ohio and even now in Baltimore, I went to Kentucky. I drove to Indiana for the day. I was in all these random places that like it was like the middle of nowhere in Indiana, but I knew people who happened to be there. And it was like, when would I ever fly to the middle of Indiana? That it opened up the opportunity to be able to do that. So definitely I started salsa dancing, which was fun. And
Salsa?
just
That's a good
salsa
salsa.
dancing.
The food and the dance, quite frankly.
The dance.
I'm here for
Yeah,
both.
yeah, exactly. So it's just the opportunity to try things that maybe you wanted to do, but you didn't do. And so I feel like, man, if I'm gonna move really far away, why not do some other fun things along the way?
Katherine, thank you so much for sharing. I want to open it up to the audience. If there's anyone here that has a question, please feel free to come off mute and ask your question or put it in the chat box. So we're gonna give the audience some time to think of some things, type some things that they feel.
And can I add one
Sure.
more thing? One of the things in my bio that I talked about was being very passionate about social work and making money, because it's important, and I think it's important to talk about even here. And I remember one of my first info sessions at Pitt, Kiamber, I don't know if you remember this, or Tyree or India, there was a Charlie Brown clip that was shared that said, "What do social workers make?" And they said, "Charlie Brown," or "They make a difference. They make a difference, Charlie Brown."
I do remember
And you
that video. I know what you're talking about. I
it
think
was
I
like a little
forgot we
clip or
even seen it.
picture. Yes. So he said, "We make a difference." And in that moment, when I, thought I could save the world, we all did. I was like, yes, we make a difference. It doesn't matter what I get paid because I'm going to save the world. We all are, right? But, and I understand the point of it. And we make a difference. And I want to get paid too. I do. And so
Absolutely.
both and so I'll be honest in saying travel social work, and it doesn't even have to be far. And I think that was one thing that opened my mind, is that there are a lot of local contracts that can be taken. So even if, you're on this call and you're saying, "I don't think I want to move across the country," or "I have a family," or "I have kids," or "I have friends, I have responsibilities," you don't have to move across the country. There are ways to make travel pay at local facilities. And so even if that means, hey, I want to take a break from what I'm doing for a year and do travel for a year, you can make good money in a short amount of time. There are pros and cons to everything. That's life. But I do think it's worth considering that there are ways to make money in this field, and there's nothing to feel shame about because of it. So
Thank you for sharing that, Katherine. I'm really glad you touched on money, because money can be a very finicky topic when it comes to the field of social work. Everyone wants to be, let's not ask for anything, but we have a livelihood to maintain. And so I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. Do you know do most travel social work positions require a clinical license?
they do not. They do not. My friend who I'm traveling with, Jenna, she does not have her clinical license yet. She's working towards it. I don't want to say most, a lot of positions do not require a clinical license. Most positions do require a license. not all, but most do require the first master's level license. Most just want people who are willing to work. Having hospital experience is definitely key, but I'm a prime example of selling yourself, having a little faith, having those transferable skills, being willing to learn. It's definitely completely doable. It really is. So you don't have to have your C, you don't have to have all your hours. You can give it a whirl.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Katherine before we end tonight's talk?
I don't have a question, Katherine. I just want to say thank you. I'm a retired social worker, so you've kind of like reestablished my, it's hard being a retired social worker because I still identify as being social workers. We're not like accountants or, whatever. So anyway, you've kind of helped me kind of reevaluate what it means to actually be retired and still identify as being a social worker. I really thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mickey. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because all of the qualities that you had when you were not retired, I can imagine you still have them now and that you have a lot to offer.
I try, but I do appreciate you saying like salary and compensation is very important. And I'm old enough to have been past that. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just happy with this, but that's not good. So, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
You tell us, Mickey. You are right.
You know
You
what,
are right.
Katherine? So before we go in our last 5 minutes, if no one else has any other questions, you have a question, you can absolutely raise your hand, turn on your mic, do whatever. I'm going to ask. I'm not going to ask you to tell your business. You ain't got to tell your business right now. But
Tell my business. Well, India has a question too, but yes, I'll tell my business.
But I want to know, what is your range? Like if someone is looking to secure Katherine as a travel social worker for their site, what's your range in terms of like cost and salary for you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you answered because in the vein of salary transparency, let's go there because it's possible. So this contract, I'm making less than I did in my last contract, which I knew when I was going to start. Most of the time, there is a predetermined rate, and they're pretty upfront about this. This is how much you're going to make per week. This is the breakdown of taxable income, which will be on your W-2, versus untaxable income, which will be on your stipend. And so that really does help because not all of your income is taxed. So for example, for this 13-week assignment for 3 months, my package will be $30,000 for 3 months. My last assignment in Dayton, Ohio, and it also is based on the need as well, like how critical staffing. My last assignment in Dayton, my package for 4 months was $50,000 for 4 months. Half of that was taxable, half of that was not taxable. So you make out pretty well, especially when you don't have to tax it. And it ebbs, I would say the amount this contract right now is on the lower end. I'd say Dayton is on the higher end, but there are higher than that. And so, and then the overtime is time and a half. You make good money on that too. So if, anybody wants to give it a try, I will say there's good money to be made in short amount of times, and it can ebb and flow, but for the most part, you'll be probably about 2 to 3 times the hourly rate of people who work the same job, different pay. And that's why if there are positions in your city, the same job for very different pay. And even I'm sure that can go for medical. I mean, outside of medical, is that my dad used to always say, there is money to be made out there. You just got to know where to go get it and not to be afraid to ask for it. So even if it's not medical social work, just encourage us all to recognize there's money to be made. Just got to ask for it and know where to look.
India, go ahead. I want you to get your question in before we go.
Thanks, Camber. Catherine, you did a fantastic job tonight. Catherine was one of the first people I met at Pitt back in 2018. So to see your professional journey and just your personal journey as well, and we were former roommates, is just a great joy, and I'm super proud of you. Real quick, because we've talked about this before when we were classmates together and going through grad school together. Transferable skills and really knowing how to market yourself with a social work degree. If there are any like current students on the call, what do you think, like just two, because you know, for purpose of time, like two of the most important transferable skills for social workers or people with social work degrees to have that are relevant for any market they go into?
Really great question, India, and thank you so much. That's so sweet. I would say being able to work well with other people. And I know that sounds like cliche, but genuinely being able to work well with other people. I would say knowing there's a zillion fires in social work, but knowing what to prioritize and when. I would also say being knowledgeable about different resources in that area for the medical profession. So rehabs, having some sort of like knowledge of like medical abbreviations, even you can just Google those things. But I would honestly say being willing to communicate well with families in distress, because being in the hospital is often distressing. So I'd say kind of the one end of like the soft skills of being able to communicate well, having hard conversations, but then also the hard skills of, can you talk to the community? Can you find resources? Can you problem solve?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you,
You know,
India.
I agree. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining. Kat, thank you so much for your time. It was so good to see you. It was so good. I was so excited.
Me.
I was so excited for this because travel social work is not something we often hear about. And you are the first Pitt alum, to my knowledge, to be doing travel social work. If there's another one out there, I hope you email us and let us know your story. Because we need to know. The more people that are out there doing non-traditional roles, students need to see it. They need to know that social workers do more than just make a difference. Right. And we can make a difference in any place and still get paid very, very, very good money. I want to say that it's time. Riley, do you have anything that you need to say in closing us out?
No, I just want to say thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you to everybody for being here and being such great participants. This was amazing. It was really cool to learn more about travel social work and to hear your story. So thank you so much. And we're at time. So I think with that, if anybody else has any closing words, but yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me. And you're a star. Mickey, you're a star, whether you're retired, whether you're a social worker, whether you take phone calls, whatever you do, you're a star and you matter and you have a purpose. So thank you all for coming and for listening.